November 2012.
Is this interesting chat or not? Really? It looks kind of good. It looks like a good vid. I kind of like it.
Kiev, Ukraine.
No, accurate, why not?
This is Ivan Turkniov, the top hacker for a group of Russian insider trading hedge funds raking in hundreds of millions of dollars every year. He's just been arrested by a team of Ukrainian intelligence service officials and American Secret Service agents. Nonetheless, the people he works for are so well connected to the Ukrainian authorities that instead of going to prison, he's let free only a few days later, while the American agents are forced to leave the country. However, the US doesn't like to get played, and as such, begins one of the wildest manhunts for a massive network of hackers, corrupt officials, insider traders, and millions upon millions of illegally obtained dollars. This is the story of Egg PLC and the biggest insider trading hack the US has ever seen. This video is sponsored by NordPass, but more on that later.
Chat, the US government really hates it when people do insider trading, but it's not them doing it. It's kind of impressive, the discrepancy between how much they care when it's a civilian doing it and not some government official. Because the government official is whatever, I don't really give a fuck. They do it all the time.
This is Ivan Turkniov. He's 21 years old, and like most people his age, he wants to make money. And
hey, shout out to Aunt Pelosi, Nancy, whatever. Yeah, chat, without her, chat, the goddess of trading.
However,
she just
after
knows
the
better.
2008 financial crash, young Ukrainians like Ivan weren't able to find work easily, so he spends a lot of time online, specifically on Russian cybercrime forums. Every now and then, he joins up with some people on the forum to do small hacks here and there. But this night, something was different. While he's going through job postings, he comes across an advertisement by someone called Egg PLC. He's looking for hackers to infiltrate brokerage accounts and brokerage firms, and most importantly, he's willing to pay well. Ivan thinks this might be an easy job and contacts Egg PLC. But what he doesn't know is that what he thinks to be a simple job would turn into a massive financial fraud operation. A scheme so big it would be considered the biggest insider trading cybercrime scandal the world has ever seen. February 26, 2010. Kiev, Ukraine. It's a cold morning, and while Ukraine's capital is slowly waking up, one person has been wide awake all night. It's Ivan Turkniov, and he's currently pacing around his bedroom. He's nervous because his first job for Egg PLC is supposed to go down today, and he really wants the money. Suddenly, the phone beeps. It's a message from his new boss, and it contains the name of his first target.
Chat, what if I tell my friends, what if I work at a company that's like world leading, and I tell them, every time we go out to get drinks, right? If I'm wearing a red shirt, it means sell your stocks a little bit. And when I'm wearing a blue shirt, it means buy some more stock. And it's just what it means, right? And then, over the course of years, all my friends just buy and sell the stock of my company, and they get fucking billions of dollars. Now what? I mean, what about it?
Ivan quickly fires up his PC and gets to work. His first method of attack is using SQL injections, so he begins by scanning for vulnerable MarketWire.com URLs to find exploitable weaknesses. To keep it short, SQL injection is a way for hackers to exploit flaws in how websites interact with databases. By injecting malicious SQL code into input fields, like search bars, login forms, or even URL parameters, they can trick the system into executing unauthorized commands. This might allow access to login credentials, unpublished press releases, or even full dumps of back-end databases. In simple terms, hackers use SQL injection to make websites do things they were never meant to do and expose data that was never meant to be seen. But back to Ivan. He found some vulnerabilities and managed to get his hands on a few unreleased documents related to some of the biggest US companies. He saved as many as he could and uploaded them to a server operated by Egg plc. A few hundred miles away, somewhere in Russia, Egg plc meets with a private group of Russian and Ukrainian traders. This group allegedly includes a man called Pavel Duboy, a member of a wealthy Ukrainian family and someone who will play a massive role in the future. But for now, this group of traders goes through all of the hacked press releases. They discover that several companies are about to release positive news and place a series of long trades.
Sick.
Either way, after the weekend passes...
Chat, you know what's cool? Chat, imagine if you had this information. How many of you guys, let's be honest, chat, you get some knowledge, whatever, that something is gonna go, let's be honest, we're all buying some stocks. Chat, you got me. Hey, chat, it'd be hard to find somebody who wouldn't do it. Let's be honest.
The stolen press releases are published by MarketWired, and the global market begins to trade based on that information. Meanwhile, Egg plc and his group of traders watch their money increase every second, and just a few hours after the market opens, all of them close their positions. The first operation was a complete success, and Ivan was paid 40% of the profits each trader made.
Ooh.
It was a big payday for everyone involved, but this was just the beginning.
Chad, they probably scammed the fuck out of him. Dude, there's no shot they actually give him 40% for that shit. Let's keep it about it. They probably give him like fucking 5%. They had some fucking back-end trade bullshit. Like, come on, bro.
Of a generational insider trading ring. Early 2011, Atlanta, United States. It's early in the morning when Arkady Duboy and his business partner, Alexander Garkusha, both working for Pavel Duboy, are inside a restaurant at Atlanta Airport. They're meeting with a man named Vitaly Korchevsky, a wealthy ex-Morgan Stanley portfolio manager and a truly massive figure in Philadelphia's Russian-speaking evangelical Baptist community. He's a pastor, owns his own church, and has helped hundreds of immigrant families build stable lives, often letting them live in his own houses, helping them find jobs, and providing whatever else they might need. But today, he's not there for church-related matters. Instead, he's strictly there to discuss a deal with the two businessmen. They explain that they have a great investment opportunity for Vitaly and show him a few printed press releases, claiming they obtained them before they were officially released. But Vitaly is unimpressed. All the releases have already been published. Thinking the two are talking nonsense, he simply walks away. And this was bad. They just told a pastor that they potentially had access to insider information, and if he talked, the entire scheme could fall apart.
Chat, there has to be more than that into this story. I feel like if it were getting simplified, that seems like a crazy...
2011, Georgia, United States. Over the next few days, Arkady pushes Vitaly for another meeting, but when they finally meet again, it doesn't go according to plan. The server with the hacked press releases is inaccessible. It simply doesn't work, and Vitaly is extremely pissed off. And even though he's had enough of the two, he agrees to one final meeting. During this meeting, Ivan, the hacker, and Egg plc, the ringleader, made sure that everything worked, and Vitaly was finally able to see that the two men weren't lying. In front of him were hundreds of unreleased press releases, and all he had to do to access them was to use a trading account under Arkady's name and pay a percentage of his winning trades to Arkady, who then split it with the rest of the group. The pastor looks at the two men and, after a moment of silence, agrees to participate in their scheme. August 3rd, 2011, Philadelphia, United States. It's 3:50 p.m.
Chat, let me take a wild guess here. And this is probably like the aftermath of all these events, and it's like after all the court cases, I'm sure, and all the whatever, like releases and whatnot. And this is the story that after all the lawyers went through it or whatever, that's the thing that they came up with at the very end. But that's not how it actually happened. There's no shot that, come on, bro, really?
When Vitaly, the pastor, enters the lobby of his apartment building. Suddenly, his phone rings. He receives news that a drug developed by Dendreon Pharmaceuticals, a California-based biotech company, will not meet expected sales. It's a massive opportunity, but the market closes in just 7 minutes. Korchevsky quickly logs into his trading account and, within seconds, purchases 1,100 put options on the biotech company. This means that if the company's stock value drops, he stands to make a profit. And only 1 minute later, at 4:01 p.m., the company announced the bad news. The next day, just as the markets opened, Forbes published an article about it, leading the stock to plummet almost 70% in a few hours. And Vitaly's profit is a sweet $2.3 million US dollars,
Holy.
of which he had to pay $230,000 to Arkady. And this commission really bothered Vitaly, who decided to open a few other accounts under other people's names to avoid paying commissions to the rest of the group.
Dude, I did not pre-watch, Jack. I didn't pre-watch. It's just classic. This is just classic. It is what it is.
A move that would lead to serious consequences in the future. But Vitaly Korchevsky was just one of many traders who had been recruited and were paying commissions to Arkady and his brother Pavel Duboy. They were making hundreds of thousands in commissions every month. On the other hand, Egg plc and Valerie, who we'll mention later, were making even more since Pavel Duboy was just one of his many middlemen. And Ivan Turkniov, the hacker breaking into press release companies, who was not only using SQL attacks anymore and had completely transformed his life. From living in a small, old apartment, he went to living in a mansion in Kiev's ultra-wealthy district, Konkazaspa.
So you know what sucks, Chat? If they put a commission on it, right? It's gonna spread. Like he's gonna ask his aunt to do it, his sister, and now it's inevitable that it's gonna spread past the thing. But if they do something more flat, whatever, then they don't have any incentives to share it and diversify, and it would make everybody. It would stay more tight, and they would keep making money.
Bought supercars and sat on an almost comical amount of money, all while he supposedly didn't have a job. The gang was truly living their best lives. But what none of them knew was that everything was about to change. 2012, Kiev, Ukraine. It's a warm spring night in the capital of Ukraine when the now 24-year-old Ivan Turkniov is partying with a bunch of his friends. But they're not just normal people. All of them are talented cybercriminals who met in Ukraine's pretty big cybercrime scene. But in the middle of bottles, smoke, and beautiful women, Ivan, in a drunken boast, makes a crucial mistake. He reveals that he's been making hundreds of thousands by hacking into press release distribution services, stealing unpublished information, and giving it to a mysterious figure known only as Egg plc.
The most classic of classics.
All of the people at the table are already drunk and simply congratulate him about it. All of them except for one. Alexander Laremenko is completely sober and gets envious of Ivan. He wants in on the scheme and a big chunk of Ivan's business. A few days after Alexander overheard Ivan's drunken boast, he meets up with another hacker named Vadim Lermolovich. That night, Alexander explains that he wants a piece of the pie, but needs Vadim's help to pull it off. Eventually, Vadim agrees, but he also knows that Ivan won't invite them into the scheme willingly, and this means that there's only one possible solution: to hack Business Wire themselves, but not to steal any data. Instead, it's to locate Ivan's malware and take control of it. Luckily for them, Alexander has worked with Ivan on a few small hacks before, so he understands his workflow and knows how to find Ivan's malware. There is just one issue. They still had to get into Business Wire's network first,
but and
this wouldn't be an easy task. Either way, the two fire up their computers and get to work. They spent the entire night trying to access Business Wire's systems, and after dozens of energy drinks and cigarettes,
envy, I think, is wanting something that somebody has, right? But you can still be envious, and this is jealousy. He wants to have it, and he wants him not to have it. He wants to take it away from him, no? Isn't that what jealousy is compared to envy?
Finally found their way inside. Once they did, Alexander searched for Ivan's RAT, a remote access Trojan that enables the attacker to take control of a computer. And since Ivan's RATs usually followed the same patterns, Alexander found it relatively quickly. Next, the two most likely redirected the RAT's command and control traffic to their own servers, or outright modified the RAT's configuration, which effectively cut off Ivan's access to Business Wire's servers. Finally, they contacted Egg plc, most likely through communication methods he used on cybercrime forums, and explained that if they weren't let into the scheme, access to Business Wire would remain under their control permanently. It was a flawless act of betrayal against Ivan. Yet, if Egg plc refused to let them into the operation, Alexander and Vadim would be in serious danger. Every hour without a response from Egg plc stretched painfully longer, and just as they were resigning themselves to having made the biggest mistake of their lives, a notification popped up on one of their PCs. It was from Egg plc. Luckily for the two, Egg plc agreed to bring them into the operation, but on one condition: they had to work alongside Ivan and help expand the operation. Obviously, Ivan wasn't happy about one of his supposed friends double-crossing him, because, after all, this meant splitting the profits with two new partners. But little did Ivan know that splitting his money was only the start of a series of disastrous events for both him, his team, and the entire operation.
I thought you could just everybody do it.
March 2012, Chicago, United States. This is an employee of Strauss Friedberg, a private cybersecurity company, and he just arrived at PR Newswire's headquarters. Apparently, the U.S. authorities noticed suspicious trading patterns related to some of their press releases and told PR Newswire to hire some IT specialist for a checkup. Once the IT expert enters the office...
Wait, how? How would you triangulate that anyway? Huh? A press release, everybody's gonna have it, no? Isn't everybody gonna say something?
Suspicious trading patterns related to some...
Oh, the spike is before theirs, right? Before the next spike is after the other one. So they triangulated this one.
...of their press releases and told PR Newswire to hire some IT specialist for a checkup. Once the IT expert enters the office, he quickly gets to work and notices dozens of different malicious programs installed on their machines.
No, it doesn't make sense. That would mean that only them have the information. They're the only one that has this information. Otherwise, all the press are the same. How do you triangulate which press is the one that leaked?
Networks. It was truly a cesspool of malware, suggesting that Egg plc wasn't the only one running an insider trading operation. These companies made huge mistakes by getting phished and having keyloggers record every password they typed, something that could have been prevented by today's sponsor, NordPass. This is because NordPass...
Double ad!
Everything is... Kiev arrives back home, turns on his PC, and starts to access the different compromised press release systems. Everything is as usual. He finds a few new releases and uploads them to Egg plc's server. But when he tries to log into PR Newswire's system, he can't. The login details don't work, and when he tries to access through his RAT, it simply doesn't respond. His access had been completely cut off. Even worse, the only reason that anyone would clean up PR Newswire was that some of the traders were being too obvious with their trades. Ivan's next move is to notify Egg plc, to whom he explains that his clients are making a serious fuss and that they should be careful. Next, Ivan alerts the rest of the hackers, and they're really worried. They know they've been discovered, and if anyone manages to trace the traffic back to them, they'd be in serious trouble. But despite the growing risk...
Chat, if it happens again in another track, then they see who's not doing it. I mean, I'm confused. You can triangulate it now, no?
Egg plc forces them to continue. He demands they regain access to PR Newswire at all costs. A move that would put everyone in danger, because while they did regain access, someone was quietly watching their every move from inside PRN's servers. June 2012, Kiev Airport, Ukraine. It's early in the morning when two men in black suits arrive at the Kiev airport. They are quickly greeted by a contingent of well-dressed men and women who escort them to a blacked-out SUV. The two men are members of the U.S. Secret Service, and they're in Ukraine on a special mission. They've managed to track down a bunch of cybercriminals to Kiev and are requesting assistance from the Ukrainian intelligence service, one of the most capable, yet also one of the most corrupt, agencies in the world, a fact that will play a major role later on. Apparently, the Secret Service, supported by the SEC, managed to trace hacks against PR Newswire and MarketWired to a few different addresses in Kiev, and 3 of those addresses belong to none other than Ivan Turkniov, Vadim Lermolovich and Alexander Leremenko. Either way, the Ukrainians agree to help and begin surveilling.
Isn't that just deplorable if your highest level of intelligence is compromised? Like, that's just awful. Like, other governments only have one place to go to work with you on some shit, and it's compromised. Like, what?
The three suspects and their circle of friends. That's when they realize that all of them, even their friends, are between 20 and 26-year-old and don't have any jobs, but somehow have an apparently unlimited amount of money. It quickly becomes clear that the entire group is making money illegally, and thus, the authorities decide to make their first move. November 2012, Kiev, Ukraine. In the police station, 9 teams get ready to carry out raids all over the city. They know that they have to time everything perfectly, immobilize their targets as soon as possible, and prevent them from getting their hands on any of their devices. The teams are made up mostly of Ukrainian police and US agents, both familiar with hacking-related criminals. But even though they're experienced, they know it won't be easy and understand that resistance is extremely possible.
Капець, чувак. Стій! На землю!
Та це якась хрінь!
At the end of the operation, law enforcement managed to arrest 9 individuals and confiscated several computers belonging to Ivan's gang. On these devices, they find hundreds of stolen press releases, and even better, chat logs directly talking about the scheme. And you'd think that this is where the story ends, right? However, this is where it gets extremely complicated. You see, everyone who had been hacking with Ivan Turkniov was arrested and identified. But when questioned, they all said the same thing. They didn't work for Ivan Turkniov. Instead, they claimed to be working for someone called Egg PLC. There was just one problem. None of the hackers actually knew who Egg PLC was. The only person who did know was Pavel Duboy, someone who, at that point, wasn't on the radar of either the US or Ukrainian authorities. In any event, the US agents believed that they could somehow connect the dots from the hackers to Egg PLC, and after a few days of investigating the arrested hackers, they found something interesting. Apparently, Ivan had bank accounts in Estonia, and one of his accounts received 95,000 US dollars from a Ukrainian construction company linked to a man called Arkady Duboy, who interestingly resided in the US. But this wasn't the only thing they found. Inside of the chat logs and emails, there were messages from someone called Pavel Duboy, and these messages contained a list of US companies that were planning to release their earnings reports after the stock market closed, and orders to get his hands on these documents to upload them to a shared server. After these details were discovered by both the Americans and the Ukrainians, things started to get extremely weird. For whatever reason, the suspect stopped talking, and the Ukrainian authorities allegedly declined to help with any further investigations. All of this eventually culminated in the Ukrainians dropping charges against all of the hackers and concluding the investigation into the gang. Apparently, the Ukrainian intelligence service, or a small department inside of it, cut a deal with Ivan Turkniov. This deal included Ivan giving up over $500,000 in watches, his house, and his sports cars. But most interesting was the last part of the deal. He had to start working for the Ukrainian intelligence service himself and give their members access to all of the press releases he hacked for Egg PLC. In return, Ivan and his friends were let free and allowed to continue whatever operation they were doing with Egg PLC. It's unknown what exactly happened, but it's possible that the only reason the charges were dropped is because Pavel Duboy, Arkady's brother, and let's not forget a member of an extremely influential Ukrainian family, pulled some strings to secure the release of Ivan and the other hackers. You see, Pavel is known to have ties to both Alexander Turkniov, the former head of Ukraine's intelligence service, and Alexander Duboy, a prominent Ukrainian politician and member of the Duboy family. And while there's no concrete evidence, it's possible that one of them made a call to have the hackers released. This part is truly murky, but one thing was for sure. The US Secret Service, FBI, and the SEC really didn't like it. But since they weren't allowed to pursue any further action against the hackers inside of Ukraine, the team had to leave the country knowing that their targets were still free, and most likely, still hacking. On the other hand, they at least got a new target, Pavel Duboy, a person that would most likely get them closer to Egg PLC. Even better, all the hackers had been identified, and even though they weren't in US custody, the Secret Service wouldn't give up on them and began waiting for the perfect moment to grab them. November 2014, Cancun, Mexico. It's a beautiful day in a Cancun resort while Vadim Lermolovich, one of the members of Ivan's hacking team, is relaxing at the pool. The sun is shining, his drink is fresh, and he's simply loving life. Later that day, he goes to a restaurant with his girlfriend, where the two have an amazing dinner. But seconds after he pays for the food, a group of Mexican law enforcement officials suddenly storm the restaurant. They ignore everyone, go straight to Vadim, and arrest him on the spot. At the same time, a different group of officers break into his hotel room to confiscate all of his devices. Vadim committed the one cardinal mistake, leaving Ukraine as a wanted US criminal. Interestingly, nobody in Mexico really knew him, which opens the question of who alerted the Mexicans about him being there in the first place. Either way, the Mexican authorities quickly informed him that he wasn't welcome in their country and that they'd send him straight back to Ukraine. But once Vadim arrives at the airport, he's loaded into a plane with only a few other people inside. Something seems weird, but after all, a plane is a plane, he thinks. But still, during the first few hours of the flight, he can't get that weird feeling out of his mind. Something seems strange. Then, only a few hours into the flight,
Ladies and gentlemen, we're starting our descent. Please fasten your seatbelts.
They're landing, and it's not in Ukraine. That's when Vadim realizes what's going on. He panics, and while he looks around, he notices that one of the passengers is looking straight at him and has an earpiece. Then, when the airplane finally lands, the pilot announces the destination. Welcome to the United States city of Dallas, and as your pilot, I wish all of you a great time. Suddenly, everyone inside the airplane stands up, looks at Vadim, and announces that they're all members of the Secret Service, and that Vadim is now on US soil, which means
that's pretty clever, Chad, but is that illegal?
Means that he's going straight to jail. For almost 2 years, the Secret Service had been monitoring everyone who had been detained during the Kiev raids in 2012. And of course, they were simply waiting for them to slip up. And most likely, it was US authorities that alerted the Mexicans about his stay in Cancun. Interestingly, though, there was no official extradition from the Mexican authorities, which means that someone in Mexico did the US a favor by putting Vadim in a flight that coincidentally had a layover in the US, and of course, letting US agents onto the plane before it even took off.
Wait a minute.
Ironically, Vadim was first saved by corrupt officials in Ukraine, only to be arrested by a different set of corrupt officials in Mexico, who, unlike the Ukrainians, seemed to be allied with the US Secret Service.
Oh well.
Either way, Vadim was now in US custody, and he knew a lot. The only question was whether he'd talk. But that wasn't even the worst blow to Egg PLC's operation. Back in Ukraine, Pavel Duboy had apparently gone rogue and started to secretly sell press releases behind Egg PLC's back, something that would force Egg PLC to finally step out of the shadows. Late 2014, somewhere in Russia. Late at night, Egg PLC is sitting in his home. It's raining outside and he can't sleep. He knows about the raids, has been notified about Lermolovich's arrest and about the Dubovoy's secret operation, but doesn't know what to do. A few sleepless hours later, he decides to directly contact Pavel Duboy, to whom he explains that he knows about his rogue operation and that as of today, both him and his brother Arkady are permanently cut off of the scheme. But he adds that if they wanted back in, they need to meet him in Ukraine in person. Now, under pressure from the ringleader, Pavel quickly arranged for his brother to come to Ukraine, and once he was there, a meeting between someone named Valerie, who may in fact be Egg plc, and the two Duboy brothers took place in January 2015. During this meeting, the brothers were offered to regain access to the press releases by paying a deposit of $300,000 on top of another $100,000 per week member fee. These sums were too high for the Duboy brothers, who declined the offer. But even though they declined to officially regain access to the press releases, they wouldn't give up their access to free money so easily and tried using a different, though far riskier, path. Things are getting complicated at this point, so let's recap for a second. At this point, it's early 2015. The group was created in 2009 by Valerie and Egg plc, who recruited Ivan Turkniov and later his hacking acquaintances to infiltrate press release companies. Of these hackers, all have been identified, forced to work with Ukrainian intelligence services, and one of them has been arrested in Mexico before being sent to the US. Next, there were dozens upon dozens of traders and hedge funds paying middlemen, such as the Duboy brothers, for access to unreleased press releases. These middlemen would then provide their clients, for example, U.S. pastor Vitaly Korchevsky, with trading accounts registered under the middleman's names. These accounts are then topped off with money from the customer. This is done so the middlemen can see how much money each of their customers made and easily take their commission. These accounts were then also analyzed by Egg plc and his team to make sure that the middlemen, such as the Duboy brothers, paid the proper commission to Egg plc and the hackers. But because the Duboys had gone rogue...
Why do they need that much money to make these work? Is it because if they do too much on one trade, they're going to get flagged or something like that? I don't get it.
Egg plc completely cut them off the scheme, so everyone else recruited by the Duboys, such...
No, guys, it's not that they need more money. I mean, why do they need more money to make the trades, though? Like, why ask for people to do part of your shit for them to put in money? Why don't they just go all in on every trade?
As Vitaly Korchevsky was
that's
now
obvious,
also
exactly.
out of the game.
Yes, I was right.
Nevertheless, Pavel had been involved in the scheme since its beginning, and thus knew a few other people who also became middlemen under Egg plc. One of these people was Valery Pichenko, the husband of one of Pavel's family members. And even though it's unknown exactly what happened, Valerie started to secretly send relevant press releases to the Duboys. The Duboys were now playing a dangerous game, and if their involvement was discovered, they'd be in serious danger. Even worse, the US had made substantial progress in their investigation by linking Arkady Duboy, his construction company, and Pavel Duboy to the Ukrainian hackers. But this wasn't all. Apparently, they also found a bunch of trading accounts registered under the Duboy brothers' names, and these were extremely suspicious. First of all, they were being funded by overseas shell companies, and secondly, they were trading an extremely suspicious pattern which perfectly matched insider information trading patterns. Interestingly, even some of the Duboy straw companies had trading accounts, which followed the same patterns of...
Couldn't they have a system that does this automatically all the time? Like, it should be impossible, chat, technically, it should be impossible for anybody to do insider trading. Because you do 2 or 3 trades and you're fucked.
Strange funding and insider trading. At that time, the authorities discovered over 34 of these accounts, which totaled over $100 million in profit, and obviously a win rate that was simply impossible. There were probably more accounts that the authorities didn't find, but they knew that Arkady, as well as several of the people logging into these accounts, were residing in the US. It was the perfect opportunity to strike. August 11th, 2015. Georgia, United States. At 5 a.m., Arkady Duboy wakes up in his mansion. He walks to the bathroom to get into the shower, but as he walks through the hallway, he notices a bunch of cars stopping in front of his house. Suddenly, he hears the back door of his house being smashed open. He knows that he's messed up, and that right now, there's nothing he can do anymore. The authorities arrest him and his son without any resistance, but they're not alone. At the same time, several other arrests are happening all over the US, and one of them is none other than Pastor Vitaly Korchevsky, who is arrested in his Philadelphia home. The Duboy group in the US was falling apart. Everyone was being arrested, tons of electronics were being confiscated.
Well, let's be honest, it's just some congressperson or some shit like that was probably mauled or some shit that somebody was making more money off of inside trading than him and made it really look bad, so they ordered this to happen.
And dozens of homes were being searched for evidence.
Somebody was getting one up to.
Meanwhile, in Ukraine, Pavel Duboy, the head of the Duboy group, was informed about these events and immediately initiated his emergency plan. He grabbed a few thousand in cash, a fake Russian passport, and jumped into a blacked-out car that drove him straight towards Belarus. He knew that this moment marked the end of the Ukrainian Duboy operation, which netted the group over $100 million US. Pavel had truly...
I don't want to be weird, chat, but that seems pretty little money with the amount of training volumes that there is and how much money... Bro, only 100 mil for all this fucking entire training? Brother, come on, man. Really, this is some rookie shit.
Up. The US knew who he was, and if word about him continuing...
Bro, 100 mil for the... Bro, they had all of them and their associates and their commissions. That's peanuts. What the fuck are these guys doing? Bro, yo, if you're gonna receive the biscuit and you have inside information, brother, you need to grease your fucking paws, buddy. This is some rookie fucking numbers in this bitch. Bro, in this racket, they need to fucking go all in on every trade. Go, like, what?
The secret insider scheme with Egg PLC's documents came out, Egg PLC would probably hunt him down as well. Pavel had to go underground, at least for a while. At this point, everything gets messy again.
Bro,
it seems as if the entire...
You fly to the US, you go to Wall Street, you find a bunch of fucking stock bros at the club, you make a group full of fucking stock dumb fucks, make your own little side firm or whatever, and then you just mass fucking puts and shit on options trading on this bullshit. And it, bro, it's just too easy.
The entire Ukrainian part of Egg PLC's operation came to an end, and Ivan Turkniov, the hacker who had been working for both Egg PLC and rogue elements in the Ukrainian intelligence service, seemed to have been cut off as well. This is because a few months later, Ivan, who probably needed money, was hired by a conglomerate of Ukrainian companies to hack into the country's fiscal service database. There, he altered the tax information of his clients to most likely pay less in taxes. Unluckily for him, the authorities found out, and this time the crime was conducted inside of Ukraine's territory, which meant that he was now fair game, and he knew this. Ivan takes everything he needs and drives straight into Ukraine's eastern war zone. From there, he crosses into Russia, where he most likely met Egg PLC, and has since simply vanished. Another important person, the last free hacker, Alexander Leremenko, was still in Ukraine, and he too seems to have been cut off from Egg PLC. This is because after the group's collapse in 2015, Leremenko started to work for Artemy R., a well-known and well-connected businessman from Ukraine. Artemy founded Benjamin Capital Group, a UK-registered company that served merely as a front for individuals seeking to buy insider information, which, as you might think, was stolen by hacking into newswire services. Essentially, it was the same operation as Egg PLC's, but without Egg PLC or the Dubois, and instead of a...
Chat, I don't know how this all works, though. People that work at the press place, all these guys, all their families, that's so much people exposed to information that's private and privileged. Nobody is doing anything... Oh, come on, bruh. Come on, brother.
Three-person hacker team, it was carried out solely by Alexander. Interestingly, while working for Artemy, Alexander learned how to infiltrate the SEC's Edgar system, which is the primary database where public companies file their financial reports and disclosures. By hacking into Edgar, Alexander could access sensitive, non-public information before it became widely available, which helped Artemy's clients make money by, of course, illegal insider trading. Artemy didn't seem as professional as Egg PLC. Instead of paying everyone, he kept all the money for a luxurious lifestyle and didn't even pay the staff he hired to maintain the appearance of a legitimate business, nor Alexander, who started to get tired of his boss's shenanigans. But sadly for him, the situation got dark very quickly. He wanted to leave this operation after about a year, but Artemy kept him working there under threats of violence. Because, after all, Alexander didn't have Egg plc, Ivan Turkniov, nor the Duboy family's protection anymore. He had been left completely alone. Things eventually got so bad that Artemy's company got a bad reputation for squandering its clients' money, and some of these clients tried to poach Alexander for their own insider trading operations. However, when Artemy got wind of this, he hired thugs to beat up Alexander multiple times, and according to the Ukrainian cybersecurity chief, he might have even been killed. The other possibility is that some of these wealthier clients helped Alexander escape to Russia, where he'd continue his work, but in complete secrecy. Interestingly, an indictment from 2019 claims that Alexander is actually still alive, and as you might guess, still hacking into newswires and the SEC's Edgar system. But this time for a Hong Kong-based...
Yo, what is newswires? Brother, just shut down the fucking site, man. If one site is leaking bro, just shut down the fucking spot, man. What is this shit?
Investing company called Spirit Trade Limited, which was led by a bunch of people living in the US, Russia, Asia, and Ukraine. This could mean that someone successfully poached him from Artemy, but it's also interesting that this indictment lists Alexander's residence.
Okay, here's a spoiler. I'm calling it. This newswires shit, allegedly, let's keep it a buck. Nobody fucking hacked into anything, okay? They self-hacked. They just backdoored themselves with a dude at the bars over there, and they're just feeding the info. Bro, it is what it is.
Kiev, Ukraine.
No shot. They keep getting hacked every
time.
Given
Artemy's threats to Alexander, this might not be accurate anymore. At the end of the day, Alexander Leremenko, like Ivan Turkniov, simply vanished. Their story stands as a powerful example of how a few young, talented men, initially just trying to make a living, found themselves on the wrong path. Perhaps they had no other way to earn significant money, and once that money flowed,
what is Newswire?
Things began to take unexpected turns, culminating in many people getting hurt or landing in prison. For example, the group that was arrested in the US ended up completely fractured, with everyone pointing fingers at each other and people snitching left and right. Obviously, all of them also ended up in prison, and even though the sentences vary from person to person, the lowest one, which was given to Arkady and Igor Duboy, was of 6 months and 3 years of supervised release. On the other hand, Vitaly Korchevsky got 5 years in prison and destroyed not only his own image, but also that of his church and its followers. His case is particularly sad because he used a lot of the illicit gains to help his community by buying homes for families without a credit score. And
that's not unfortunate though, brother. You can't moralize fucking like Robin Hood activities. Come on, bro. Bro, you can say this is good, but where do you think the gains are coming from? Brother, are you kidding me? No, how can you rationalize that? This isn't some Robin Hood shit. Your dad, your mom, people, they have money in those stocks and they're getting, bro, what is that? Everybody's playing the game properly. These are fucking everybody over.
Many of these people will now be without any help. Even Pavel Duboy, who most likely made tens of millions and wasn't caught in the US, had to flee his home country for a few years before returning in 2017, where he was immediately involved in another massive controversy in which Ukraine's Anti-Corruption Bureau accused him of offering $500,000 to help with a case involving a frozen bank account. Truly, there are only 2 winners in this story, Egg plc and Valerie, who might even be the same person and have managed to become extremely wealthy, with estimates of the profits going up into the hundreds of millions of dollars, all while remaining anonymous.
Yeah, but what do you even buy? What do you even do? I mean, yes, it's money, but then it has to be filtered to something. You have to pay tax on it. You have to buy stuff. Like, you have to go to the stores and actually buy the stuff or whatnot. Like, how can you do all that when you're nothing?
Most importantly, without doing too much dangerous work. And even though there are theories about who they are, nobody is truly sure about their identities. Finally, don't forget that day trading is 99% a scam, where the only people that make money are insiders, HFTs, and a handful of people who feel
hold on. Is it what?
Anonymous. And most importantly, without doing too much dangerous work. And even though there are theories about who they are, nobody is truly sure about their identities. Finally, don't forget that day trading is 99% a scam, where the only people people that make money are insiders, HFTs, and a handful of people who feel the market. So stay away.
I mean, true. So what you're saying is that it's gambling, is what you're saying. That's what you're saying. I've been saying shit for fucking years, and you guys get mad at me when I say this. You guys, hey, you guys get fucking mad at me when I say that it's gambling. Everybody gets mad. Everybody. But when a video says it, it's true. Yo, sug it. So, yo, pull on my tail. Pull on it. I think that was good. I think, these stories are so complex and have so many parts, it's kind of hard to really get a feel of what's true and what's not true. Some things are kind of like, oh, what the fuck? Like, it seems like over the top or kind of crazy because it's like, it's hard. But I think it was probably a good recap of that particular story. The main lines were probably somewhat true, I would assume. Somewhat true. Because it's hard to get anything. Dude, you know, how do you know this? Like, it has to be like fucking super hardcore mega documentaries for it to be like mostly accurate. But a lot of times there's a lot of, just like anything in life, a lot of it gets lost in the wind. It gets confusing. Oh, well, all those names are Chesky or Tally because they're from Eastern Europe, man. Like what? I have a widow's peak. Where? Where do you see a widow's peak?
Hello, Mr. Cow, and happy birthday. Can't believe you're 40 xQcl. Yo.
Where do you see a widow's peak? Brother, it is a straight line. Okay, whether you have a V or not, it's genetics. If you've had a class of science where they teach about genetics, you know for a fact that you either have a V right here or no V. But it has nothing to do with the balding V. Because the balding V is here. This is the genetics V. What the fuck are you guys even talking about? Man, this chat's fucking right now. I can't.